Not sure if you're going to get a lot of background noise, road noise, because that's what happens when you're in a car. Bouncing, shaking, movement. Well, you know, life is about movement and flow. Can you get in the flow? Even if it means getting out of your comfort zone. That's what I'm doing. I haven't been on a road trip in a long time. And let's talk, because as I was reflecting, an interesting thing. First off, I got gas. In Clearwater, the gas is $3.13. That was the lowest I got it. Filled up. No big deal. I don't even worry about the price of gas, because to me, if you get caught up in the price of gas and that's your life, then you're just paying attention to the wrong things. Those are distractions. Life is all about where attention goes, energy flows. Where are you putting your attention? Where are you allowing the growth? Where are you manifesting? Because if things are showing up to you in your life that you dislike, then you really need to be paying attention to your internal world, because it's all projection and mirrors. All the world's a stage, and you should be the main attraction. You should be the main star, the superstar of your life. If you're not, then you're an extra in someone else's, and you're playing into their power. You're giving them your energy, your power. A lot of people don't think like that. A lot of times you want to say, oh, I'm a victim of my circumstances. No, we are actually the creators of our circumstances. With every choice we make in our life, we have compounded interest, because every choice we make is creating our life. Nobody's doing it to us. We are not victims of anybody else. We are victims of our choosing. That's a huge difference. All right? So I'm reflecting, and a lot of people don't know this about me. My stepdad was a truck driver and an Army veteran. He served in World War II. He served in the Korean War. I also served in Korea for a year when I was in the Air Force. He was a truck driver for, gosh, I don't know how many years. That man, boy, he was a powerhouse. He was an inspiration. He was part of, I think he was actually full Cherokee Indian. I used to say he reminded me of Abraham Lincoln, because he had a lean, tall stature about him, very distinct physical features. I was a loose cannon as a teenager, so you know what? That man put up a lot of shit with me when I was young, because I was intolerant. I wanted things the way I wanted them. I had a very strong will. I had this belief system that my parents should stay together, because for some reason, and children do this, I know this because I did, I believed in my mind that my parents not staying together somehow reflected upon me as a child. That when my parents split up, that was showing that I was incomplete. This was a belief system. This was something I myself struggled with. I felt like a failure. I felt inadequate as a person, as a woman, as a young adult, that my parents not sticking together was reflected upon me. And I know I'm not the only one. I mean, how many of us have that trauma, that wound, that perfectionism, that ideology, that if a relationship doesn't work out, somehow you have some part in it, like it was your fault. I mean, how many of us as children felt like we had to stick up for our parents, or that our parents not working out somehow had something to do with us? And that's not true. Sometimes people just don't belong together. And in all honesty, they just didn't. And I didn't see that right away, and I had to finally come to terms with it. And I realized, wow, my mom deserved better, and so did my dad. They just weren't compatible, and that's okay. They came together under their own trauma bonding, under their own codependency, inadequacies, living out unmet childhood needs. That's what we do. We live out our traumas. We live out our wounds. if something is not working for us, a lot of times we attract that in our partners. And so if you're not working and healing it on your own, you will attract someone to work it out with. I've figured that out through my own personal life. Life is a series of navigating the waves, the emotions, the tides, the circumstances. Whatever life presents you, it's up to you to roll with it, to resist it, to fight, to dance, whatever it is. If there's pain and suffering, that's your choosing. It's your resistance. I was having a conversation with a friend. I said, pain is only the resistance to accepting what is because you want it to be something else. So pain is only your perfectionism, your belief system, your ideology that you want things different than they are instead of accepting them as they are. I mean, when you accept things and just allow, it's a whole lot easier than getting caught up in the trauma, fighting. Fighting is what causes all of our suffering. Suffering is a choice. Fighting is a choice. Do you go into circumstances with a closed fist or an open hand? Are you willing to receive, or are you going in with that resistance, that fight? Because that resistance, that fight is what's within you. And it's usually something internal that you're fighting against yourself. Everything that shows up outside of us is just a reflection of what's inside of us. So even with my dad the other day, I was trying to explain to him, and I know it's really strong because he's caught up in belief systems, and I try so hard to be patient. I mean, our family is our biggest teacher. I love my dad so much, it makes me hurt a little in my heart when I see him struggle and hold on to the resistance instead of allowing the flow. That when he says things like, I'm just so sick of all of these systems in this country and this and that, I'm like, Dad, it's going to be anywhere you go. Even, for years we've talked about moving to Portugal, even long before all this craziness. It's not that we want to run out of this country. I love this country. It's not about loyalty to a party, to a system, to a country, to anything, or an ideology. I mean, really, loyalty can also be at our own demise. A lot of that loyalty we were taught from a young age to keep us disempowered. Because when you're loyal to something, you're loyal to a fault, and a lot of times that loyalty is compromising your integrity and your actual happiness. So you have to really confront what is the real truth of your loyalty. Is it coming from your head or your heart? Because we're either coming from a place of fear or a place of love. If it's in the head, that's where the biggest fight is happening. The heart flows. The heart knows. It's not the heart that gets in the way. It's the head that gets in the way that leads you astray and gets you caught up in the trauma. So, yeah, my dad, I love you, Dad, if you're watching this. In all honesty, I just want to see people happy. I want to see them in their joy. I want them to really see that there's plenty of beauty in the world. And at a certain point, I was reminded the best way to keep my dad engaged in a fruitful conversation is to remind him to tell me stories of his past that light him up. And he told me a story last night, Friday night, that just cracked me up because I didn't know this story. There's a lot of times he tells stories and I'm like, oh my gosh, Dad, you need to tell more of these stories. We need to put these down in video or in the book. I honestly think in terms of what if? I lost my mom. There were so many amazing stories that my mom had to tell. I didn't expect her to be gone since we're so young. I expect her to be around a lot longer. Because for as many years as my mom was wanting to leave this earth, the universe, God, was making sure she stuck around as long as she did. So he tells this story Friday night. He went on a trip. We were talking about my dog and how, I said I was going to Miami on Sunday and I was going to ask my neighbor to watch Buddy. So fortunately, I'm very blessed with amazing neighbors that will walk across the street, let him out. Buddy's a happy dog. He loves people. And And he said, yeah, when I was younger, we had to leave our dog. My dog, I forgot what he said the name of the dog was. He said, we had to leave the dog with the kennel. And it was this guy. What did he say the name was? I'll have to ask him to tell the story again in person. Maybe we'll do a video. He said this person, this was in Massachusetts, in Boston. Now, I used to watch Bozo the Clown, which is probably how the conversation came up. He said, yeah, Bozo the Clown. Tell me that wasn't a freaking freaky. Like, I had an ex-boyfriend that was petrified and he could not stand clowns. Like, they scared the crap out of him. And I got him a T-shirt that said, can't sleep, clowns will eat me. Can't sleep, clowns will eat me. Well, think of Penny It from that movie It, that Stephen King movie. Okay, I digress. Squirrel. My dad's like, yeah, this guy, he used to work with all the animals on the Bozo the Clown show. I'm like, what, really? He said, yeah. He was watching our dog. I think the dog's name was Penny. So he said, yeah, then when we went to Canada or something, because my grandfather was French-Canadian, 𝑧𝒍𝒄𝒉𝒆𝒄𝒕. So they went to Canada, and then they came back. The guy lost the dog. So I was like, what? He goes, yeah, apparently he wasn't very good with animals. I said, doesn't sound like it. That's pretty messed up. I said, I would suspect that Grampy didn't pay for the kennel, that you didn't show up with it. You didn't have the dog. Why would I pay you? He said that they went looking for the dog, and sure enough, they found her. But I said, see, that's the thing about animals. Animals know good people. Trust your animals. They know when people are shady, shifty, and have bad energy. And even Buddy, like, I'll have people who would be like, and it's very rare. Every once in a while I'll be walking along the waterfront, and Buddy just says hi to everybody. He's the neighborhood meet and greet. It's his happy hour. So he's there. His mission is to put a smile on everyone's face. So he'll run up to people, and every once in a while there'll be one person who'll be like, I don't like dogs, or I don't like dogs. Like, really, you could feel it before they even open their mouth. And Buddy doesn't go at them, even though it looks like he's going at them. He goes around them, like, oh, yeah, not you, and then goes to whatever it is he's drawn to. But this is the interesting thing most people don't take into consideration is you got to trust nature, because nature nurtures, and nature knows. Those who don't nurture, nature doesn't resonate. It doesn't align. So let me go back to the beginning of this. So I'm on this road trip, and I had to stop. I had to use the bathroom. I'm starting to get a low blood sugar. I was getting nauseous. So I stopped to use the restroom at the Love's truck stop. And all the news right now, and it's not just Canada, all the news, love my truckers, love my trucking family, because we grew up. My grandfather had a trucking company out of Boston. And I tend to forget this because this is a part of my life. You sometimes forget little nuances. But here's the irony. Years ago, my mom took us on a road trip. We went to the 𝐒𝐾𝐅. If you don't know what 𝐒𝐾𝐅 is one of those metaphysical things. We went out to Phoenix, Arizona. And at the time, it was because Mom wanted to take us on a Maine for legal reasons. And Mom's thing was always about road trips. No figure, right? No surprise, because Mom's definition of freedom was road tripping, was the car, was being able to jump in the car at whenever it struck her, when she wanted, go where she wanted. To her, that was the definition of a freedom. And I kind of agree with that, because if you can't go where you want, when you want, that's not freedom. You can't do what you want. That's not freedom. If you have to think about it before you even do it, that's not freedom either. So Mom was totally into this trip, and I actually was really into it because for some reason I got into my mom, she had us reading books. I'm a big reader. I read a lot more when I was a kid. 𝐒𝐾𝐅 was really about empowering you and your psychic abilities. So on the road trip, we went from Missouri. My mom always used to like to stop at different libraries. And when we stopped in Missouri, it was so funny. She's like, wow, it's really nice here. I could even live here. And like, you know, she's always looking around. It was always a free gypsy spirit. And Missouri was nice. It was cold at the time. And we somehow had car trouble along the way. And again, I tell you, because she grew up with my grandfather having a trucking company, she intuitively knew, instinctively knew, the first thing you do is you go to the truck stop. You check in with the truckers. We had, in fact, I forgot about this, but we always had a CB radio in the car because that's what was the way to communicate back in those days. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have anything but the old way of communicating with the CB trucking radio. And she would tune into the different stations. My mom's trucking handle, what you call a nickname, was Phoenix Rising. Because my mom was a phoenix, and she would rise from the flame. And she was a triple Sag, so she was a fiery woman. Very strong willpower. And that's what that's part of me too. I'm a Leo, and I'm a tiger. This is my year. It's the year of the tiger too. This is my fucking year. That's all I'm saying, okay? So we took this road trip, and we had to check in. We had to find some help because she had trouble with the car. That's when we connected with my stepdad Jim. His nickname, his handle was Alcatraz. We met somewhere in Kansas City, Kansas. Let me tell you, it was in the middle of the night, and Kansas City is shady shit. And back in those days, when you're a kid, you don't know, but I remember feeling the energy was off. I also know now, thinking back to that, and knowing what I know now over these past several years of doing the deep dives into research and down that rabbit hole, the truck stations, truck stops, and ports of calls are where the biggest human trafficking occurs. If you don't know this, now you do. I mean, people are oblivious to it. They're ignorant to it because if it's not in your actual life, if it doesn't affect you, it's easy to be ignorant of it, to ignore it, to not be affected or let it affect you. And you know, ignorance is not bliss. I don't care what anybody says. It's nice to be in the know, but see, that's the balance aspect of life. You need to be able to be in awareness, but not let it take you out of your peace. Like keeping that neutrality and not let it tug you and really affect your emotions. Because when you are triggered, you know I say, if you are triggered, that is your work to do. That is your old trauma wound being rubbed. So if something affects you, you know, the only thing I don't like is I think this is picking up on my car. So hopefully I'm speaking loud enough. Let me know in the comments if you can hear me clearly. I should have turned off the... hold on a minute. Let me see if I can do it here. Let me see if I can turn... There we go. Hopefully this is better because I don't like the road noise and the car thing. So let me know in the comments if you can hear me better this way. Hopefully this will record better. I don't like when the car picks up the hands-free. Most of the time it doesn't. I don't know. You know, technology, that's my bag, that's my old work. So if you don't know, I'm an Air Force veteran. I spent over 10 years in the Air Force working in intelligence, IT, on three-letter agencies, working for NATO, working around the world, and then in government contracting. Let me know in the comments if you can hear me clearly. I need to know. I need some feedback. And so the reason I'm aware of stuff is because of my experiences. I can only speak from personal experience. And what I like to share is experience because that's what people relate to. Like, I'm not just regurgitating what I hear, what I see. I get intuitive hits and connect dots based on my personal experiences and knowing. My deep knowing is my gnosis, Gnosis. We all have it. There's a common thread within us that connects us. And the thing is if you're rejecting it, if you are in agitation, or you are someone who goes to war to defend your beliefs, it's exhausting because it's typically not in alignment. So if you're one of those people who's in that trauma response, that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, you are constantly fighting the system, fighting anything, resisting your friends, your family, whatever it is. That's going to exhaust you. That's going to tax your nervous system. That's going to take you out of your peace. It's going to weaken your immune system. It's going to take away your power and disempowers you. Like, you need to choose your peace. Put your pieces back together. Be your wholeness. So when you are triggered, recognize that, because that's an opportunity for your growth and expansion, to reclaim your power. That when you are breaking down, that's going to be a breakthrough if you see the opportunity. That when you don't have peace, inner peace, it's time to reclaim your pieces and put them back together. That's the only way you find your peace. Because wholeness is all of you, not the parts you want to choose because they feel good, but the uncomfortable parts too. The difficulties, the challenges that you've overcome, the stress, the struggle, the strife, all of that is part of you too. And that is a part of your wholeness. When we defy, when we deny, we reject, we need to reflect. Those are the pieces that make us who we are. Those are the things that people relate to the most. That when we overcome our obstacles and our challenges in life, that's the part that people really truly relate to. Like, sharing your deepest, darkest wounds and your hurts. Like, I try to do that, and maybe I don't seem relatable to some people. Maybe I'm over people's heads. I don't know. You know, I know I go deep. I go really deep, and I know that. I know that about myself because I'm willing to do that deep work and reflect upon my life. Ooh, that's beautiful landscaping, squirrel. I love to vision quest. I love to look around. I love to be inspired. And travel is what really inspires me, which is why over these years I've really felt like in a slump, in a little bit of a need to explore, a need to get out of my comfort zone. So this opportunity to come to Miami was like, I jumped at it because it's an opportunity for like minds to come together. Leo King, if you don't follow him on YouTube, look up the Leo King or the Leo Kingdom. He's an amazing astrologer. I've been following him since about 2011 or 12 when I first found him. And what I like about astrology, I've been following astrology since I was a child. You know, when they used to have those little, I don't know if they still have them. I think they were Zolas, or they were the roll-up astrology. They were 50 cents, and they were expensive back in the day in the 70s and 80s. And I remember begging my mom, please buy me one. They were even in those little slot things where you put, quarters in. And I just found those fascinating because it was an interesting insight to learn about myself, to learn about my inner workings. Like, that's what decoding yourself is all about. Like, if you don't know yourself, that's why you got to do your own work and heal yourself. If you don't know yourself, what makes you think somebody else needs to understand you if you don't understand you? Like, so many people are like, you need to understand where I'm coming from. It's like, do you understand where you're coming from? Do you know what motivates and inspires you? Do you know what your virtues are and values and what priorities you place in life? Do you even know who you are, what you want to be, what it is that drives and motivates you? Like, what is your purpose? What is your passion? What is your vision? What is it that you want to experience in this life? Boy, people can be dangerous when they're driving. And the thing is, if you don't do the work and get to know you, there's no way anybody else is going to do it for you. That's your work to do. So, you can try escapism, going into all these different groups, these cliques, belonging to different niches, connecting with people, because life is about relationships. So when we relate to another, that's how we learn to relate with ourselves. When we connect with others, we go into groups and, we try to find our tribe. We are, in essence, looking for people to reflect back to us, because as we relate to another, we are experiencing ourselves through that other. That is part of the work. But if you seek to escape yourself, meaning you can't be alone by yourself, you have to ask the question, why? And that if you're not comfortable with you, and even the deep thoughts that come up within you, see, meditation is single-minded focus. Most people will say they can't meditate because their minds are too busy, but that's your ongoing programming coming to surface. And as long as you know what that is and you can sit with it, it's easier to handle it, instead of letting it freak you out and be the unconscious driver of your life. Because if you're unconscious of what's driving your life, then you are at the whim. You are enslaved by it. You're not mastering your life. You're being mastered by your life. I can go on and on and on about this. These are just thoughts that I go through on a daily basis, and I speak it out loud, and I like to do these videos because maybe it inspires someone else. So road trips are great ways to get out of your comfort zone. I drive fast, I'll just say that. Right now, I'm just under 2 hours to Miami. I have no idea where I'm going because nobody has determined a meeting point. We had an offer to someone's home, which I think is the best solution. Mostly because comfort, small private settings, in my opinion. Public settings sometimes can be distracting. You don't know the energy of an environment. And we already know we all have a common interest in what's bringing us together. And I think it would be more personal in a private setting in someone's home. So we'll see what happens. But as I'm driving on this trip, and I stopped at the gas station to eat my food and kind of get the nourishment going, to ground myself, I was reminding myself about the stories, and as I was sharing about going to Arizona, back to the story, because I digress, squirrel off. Essentially, we went on that trip, and that's how we met my stepdad. And I don't know, my mom, she always seemed to make things work. My mom was a master manifester. When she really wanted to make things work, she could magically manifest things out of thin air. Maybe we didn't even have enough money. I don't even know how she did it. But my stepdad, when we got, and I remember the trip through New Mexico and everything else, my stepdad, when we got to Arizona, Phoenix, we wanted a place with a pool. Mom wasn't sure she could pay for that because we didn't know what we were going to be able to afford. So we get there, my stepdad paid for a poolside room, 2 separate rooms, one for himself and one for us. And we may have little interview along the way, but I will reconnect either way. So and he paid order like 5 different things off the menu. He didn't care. I love my dad, but my dad would be like, choose one thing, like you don't have to order everything on the menu. And I was always the one he'd say, why is he always the expensive thing on the menu? You're going to have to marry someone rich. And I looked at him and I'm like, who said I had to marry someone rich? Who said I couldn't be rich? Like, that was my mindset as a child. Who said I had to rely on somebody else, right? Although I think that's a little extreme because I think sometimes the whole idea that another person has to complete you has been part of this paradigm too. But my stepdad, he didn't worry about money. He wanted to make sure we were happy the same way my mom did. It was always about seeing our joy and really being a part of it. And that's important for children growing up, is to feel valued, feel appreciated, to be inspired, because the way you about 84 miles before. All right, we're going to have little hiccups, I'm sure. getting close to LA. I'm about 84 miles before I even get off, so to that direction. But essentially, if you teach a child that they're not worthy of a simple meal because it's too expensive, you're teaching them that you don't value them, that money is more important than that child. And so that lack mentality gets passed on to your child. And that's a hard thing to really recondition and reprogram when you get older. I've been working on that one all my life. And honestly, I had the struggle between a mother who didn't necessarily manage money that well. When she had it, she spent it on us. So she showed us she valued us. Whereas my dad, who when he had it, he held on to it because he lacked. He had the lack mentality, and he didn't feel worth, so he passed that on. So this imbalance of my parenting, of what my parents demonstrated to us as children, was something I have struggled with all of my life. And so I sought to become financially independent of that, to be professional, and to be successful in my dealings and my negotiations, to negotiate really well in my work. When in my work, for example, we're coming into Alligator Alley, so if we do have trouble, I may have to start over at some point. But in my dealings, when I negotiated my first jobs out of the Air Force, I did really well. For a woman, I know I did really well because essentially I knew my worth. I knew how good I was at my job. I didn't necessarily have to apply to jobs. I was scouted. Of course, you got to fill out the paperwork, but I negotiated my job so well that even when I went to Italy, I was doing deep research into Northrop Grumman's policies for overseas hires, and they didn't even know that I could get an interest-free loan when I bought my car. So I had a year interest-free loan to order my brand new Mini Cooper, which has a whole other story. And I negotiated that into my deal, as well as they paid for my registration and everything else because it was part of HR. So if you don't know, you're only hurting yourself. But if you do the research, then you know. You got to know what your rights are. You got to know what's available to you. Ignorance is not bliss. That's the point. So you got to know your worth, and you got to be willing to ask. If you don't ask, you won't know. And at least if you ask, then you know. And a yes or a no is a definitive answer. So if you get a no, at least you know where you stand. And that can redirect your life. Whereas if you're traipsing through life in that ignorance bandwagon, thinking, well, I don't think, you're assuming that you don't have options. That's at your own demise. At least if you ask the questions, like people who stay in relationships, they're out of fear, they don't want to renegotiate those relationships. They're afraid to ask the deep questions like, where's this going? Do you love me? Do we have the same goals? They'll stay years with the same person, unhappy, and in fear of losing that person, instead of recognizing that maybe that person isn't even meant for them. Yes, I've done that. We've all done it. And then I've also had the strength and the courage to open my mouth and ask the question, where's this going? And yes, it hurt. It stung when it turned out that they weren't on the same page and that they were just basically along for the ride, enjoying the freebies, the fringe benefits of relationship without commitment. I even was uncommitted in my relationship, so I'm just as guilty, okay? And I had people and men who wanted to stay with me and be committed to me that I wasn't committed to. And they asked me, and I had to be straight up and honest. If you're not honest with yourself, though, and you're not willing to ask the question, that's living life without direction. And without direction, you're being mastered. You're not mastering your life. That's a huge insight into you. And you need to know who you are. And that's the biggest travesty of this life, too, is that people are living their lives at the behest and not their own request in ways that they have no idea aren't serving them because they're ignorant to it. They're not paying attention, they're ignoring it. Now I'm looking off in the distance and I'm seeing this, what looks like smoke off in the horizon. It's really strange, but it looks like it's kind of coming over this way. It looks like it's up in front of me. It doesn't look like a normal smoke, like it could be chemical. I don't know what this is, but I'll keep you posted. So yeah, we went out to Phoenix, Arizona on that road trip, and 𝒂𝒂𝒅, we went to that. And those were some of the beginning stages of my life that I learned about truck driving. I learned that truck drivers are some of the friendliest. Now, there's going to be shady people in all walks of life. But the people I was surrounded with and exposed to were some of the most supportive, loving, would do anything, give you the shirt off their back for nothing. Like, I know if I went to a truck stop because I needed help, I know what to do. Like, I realized that I learned that survival, it's not like you can rely on it. Although, it's interesting that we are so supposedly technologically advanced, yet, I'm sorry, what's up with the mess of the wires? I always think this. So, going back to this, if it weren't for my childhood growing up, exposure to truck drivers, truck stations, truck stops, and, you know, my mom taught us some seriously powerful survival skills. You know, when you need help, there are people available who are willing to help that don't expect anything in return. It's called paying it forward. It's called humans doing good human things. There's a lot more good humans than we realize. Just because we see the bad in the world doesn't mean the good doesn't exist. And again, this is about a projection. Whatever's going on inside of you is what's going to show up around you. You're going to attract where you're at. So if life is really shitty, look inside and ask yourself, what is the message in this? What is this trying to teach me? So I'm really proud of the truckers right now because those are the first people, the first line. They're the ones who see the true nature of goods and services and what's coming down the pipeline. They know the truth of what's really unfolding. They're the ones who deliver everything we receive. And we rely upon them, and you don't actually realize how important those people are. You may think, oh, you know, truck drivers, that's a hard life, that sucks, I could never do that. Yeah, you know what? I remember my stepdad, back in the day, before technology, I don't even know if they always had to do the logs. They had to keep written hand logs, documenting their trips, when they stopped, when they got gas. They had to write everything down. And then when my stepdad started working for Werner Enterprises in Omaha, Nebraska, which was about the time I was just about to transition, and I went from Omaha, Nebraska. Oh yeah, that's a controlled burn, all right. It's coming across the road now. I went from Omaha, Nebraska, off at Air Force Base. I went to Osan Air Force Base in Korea. He started working for Werner in that time, and my mom moved out to Omaha, Nebraska right before I left. And that's when the technology shifted to digital and the computerized GPSs in the trucks. Yeah, he got a nice fancy rig and a nice fancy truck with a big bed and all that, so that he could, you know, we used to go on wonderful trips with him when we were kids. He worked for different companies over the years. That's also how we learned that, and then most people don't know this because we lived in Maine. I picked potatoes when I was a kid, too. The schools in northern Maine, they let the kids out of school for 2 weeks to harvest potatoes. And every year, that was an opportunity for us to make money. We would make 50 cents a barrel. We'd put the tickets on the barrel. Sometimes people would switch the tickets because that's how shady people operate, too. Wow, that's really close to the road. And, you know, I was young, and it's a way to make money.
So my stepdad, because he would transport all sorts of stuff, he transported potatoes. And that's when I learned, did you know that they take potatoes from Maine to Idaho and put those potatoes that come from Maine in Idaho bags? So every once in a while when you think, oh, those are Idaho potatoes, those are big potatoes, you don't know. They might be coming from Maine. Talk to me about deception and the corruption. How deep it goes. My mom could see the malicious because she knew the origin of the internet. But I also looked at it and said, Mom, just like anything, you can harness the power of the internet for good. Just like anything, duality, baby. Where there's good, there's going to be bad. That's the yin and the yang. That's the true and the false, and that is this duality, this life we live in. So I was looking in the back window, and holy crap, dude, that smoke is, woof, I can smell it in the car. So and then I turned my head, and I'm like, oh. See, I just had my car washed last night, and he didn't do a very good job in the back window, but anyway. But yeah, you know, it's like, if you don't know, you've never experienced, you don't know what you don't know. And the corruption goes deep into every crevice of our lives. The system is so convoluted and so layered that I got kombucha in the trunk, and of course, I always travel with my booch. I was at the escape room the other day, and I was telling the woman I was having a great conversation about stuff. I said, you know, I've always wanted to start a business, but I've been very resistant to it, because when you go to start a business, the first thing you got is the government holding its hand out because it wants to it basically kills your dreams before you get them off the ground, because they all keep their hands out for a handout. Who's the real welfare system, people? I should be able to have a business and not have to worry about regulation. You know, everybody thinks, oh, we need regulatory agents. How about we be good humans and go back to the honor system? Because the truth of the matter is, we humans need to tap back into our intuition, to learn to discern and stop relying on Big Brother and Big Daddy or Uncle Sam to watch over us. Because the truth is, they're not looking over us. They're controlling over us. They're dictating. You heard me on my other video the other day. You know what a dictator is? The little dick waving his dick trying to maintain control and mark its territory. And that's what we got going on right now. So the only way to really, truly create the new is dissolve the old. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at. And that's what we're here to do, people. We didn't come here to fix the old, outdated bullshit. I mean, just looking around, we are not the most advanced civilization. We have no proof of history except for what they told us. I don't even believe in the carbon dating anymore. I think that's bullshit. I wonder if science is even real. And the only reason I say this is because everything's based on what we've been told. So you can show me proof. I want to see personal experience. I want to hear personal stories. Because everything that we've been told is the history they want us to tell us. His story, regurgitated. How about we tap into our real ancestors, you know? Tap into the wisdom within. That's what I try to do. And the stories that I remember from my family and what I've learned. I've learned a lot. Oh my gosh. So, you know, truck drivers, some amazing people, they see some shit. I'm just saying. Like I said earlier, if you don't know, the truck stations, truck stops, and ports of entry are the biggest human trafficking locations. You don't know. And they use children to trap and attract more children. So, you know, if children get abducted, think about it. Usually they use other children to do it. And I've really reflected upon that because I think back to my mom when she was younger. But a lot of stories she told us. I'll share those in other videos. But I was really just proud of what's going on in the world today because there's a lot not being broadcast. There's a lot that's not being shown. It's not just happening in Canada, it's happening around the world. It's happening in Australia, happening in the Netherlands, in Europe. Never discount the power of the human connection. Never discount the power that we have within us. We are more powerful than we've been led to believe. Don't believe the hype. All the numbers, all the news, what they've tried to tell us, I think is inflammatory. It's sensationalized, just like history. And when you look around, like I was talking about technology, like same people who created war are the ones who are actually the ones who developed all these technologies. The internet, DARPA, came from the military. IT. We're 25, 30 years behind what's really going on behind the scenes. What gets trickled out and shared with the public is always it's always orchestrated too. If you really stop and think about it, they do it because it's part of the addiction. It's part of the drip programming, psychology. Basic psychology, people. PSYOP, psychological operations, conditioning. That's part of my background too. I mean, heck, if you've ever had trauma in your life, you've been around narcissists, you've been in an environment of abuse, you're hypersensitive to recognizing it. And when you're a super empath, apparently this is a term. I'm sort of individual, unique being. But something I heard the other day, that narcissists dislike super empaths because they see through their bullshit. They can't actually put a thumb on them. That's been me all my life. I can't say I haven't been duped. I've obviously made some poor choices and wanted to be wrong about things and tried to do things differently because I was somebody who was non-committal. So you talk about relationships. I was the person who would run because of fear of being rejected. So I would be the one to reject and run away. I did that in my life. Or, long distance relationship isn't a real commitment, by the way. It keeps people at arm's distance. You only see them when you see them. So that's control. But it's also manipulation. Fully responsible for everything. Because even as someone may claim to be the victim of the other person, they themselves are allowing it. And I'm not trying to point fingers, but even in my case of my personal experiences, I've had to reflect back and gone, holy shit, I allowed that person to treat me that way. At the time, yes, I was full on in victimhood mentality. I was full on, it was all their fault. And that's a human nature, to point fingers. But when you point a finger, you got three back, and you're just as responsible for allowing what is happening to you as you are participating in your experience. So you can't just push it out on everything else around you because that's coming from within you. And typically the way a person treats you is the way you're treating yourself. If you don't value yourself, that other person's not going to value you either. And so it's real easy to try to play the victimhood game. But here's one thing I also know, that if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, and you don't realize it, because a lot of times you don't pick it up right away, if you are trying to manipulate using your emotions, you hurt my feelings, you are manipulating too. So you're playing the game along with them. Because in some way, shape, or form, you think, and it's a coping mechanism and a survival tactic, it's a whole trauma response, that you think that if I show my emotions, they'll play into and change for me, and they'll show me they care. It's a whole belief around if they care enough, they'll take my feelings into consideration. But you've got to go deep within yourself and own that. And I did it. I am speaking from my experience. Like, I had to own that in myself. Like, holy crap, I'm just as much manipulating the circumstances, thinking that I can try to get them to show me and that they value and care about me. But with the narcissist, they don't give a shit. They're worried about their needs getting met. They're worried about controlling you and belittling you to uplift themselves because they don't know any other way. They only know conflict. Resolution doesn't even enter their mind. Whereas in a lot of our minds as empaths, we seek to resolve, and we seek even closure with these people, when in reality you just look in the mirror and go, I made a poor choice. I gave that person more power. I gave them my power, my energy, and you just got to reclaim it, and you got to own it. And it's a process of healing, but you got to feel into it too, because that's why we incarnated as humans. You got to feel it to heal it, and if you're not feeling, then you're numbing it out, and that's part of addiction. When we numb the pain, we numb the joy. And life is all about the feels. You got to feel all the feels, no matter how good or bad it is. Wow, that's a lot of towers with radar and jump on it. Tell you what, technology is so ugly. We're so technologically advanced. I keep going back to this because there's so many crappy looking towers and wires. And I'm like, we could do better, people. I'm coming from a technology background, and I'm saying, this is not technology. This is bioweaponry. And there's a huge difference. Because the same people who gave the access are using it and saying, we're advancing civilization, are the ones using it against us. That these devices that have become our vices are collecting our data. They're actually tracking us. That we think, you got to know, if you know what you're using it for, but know what it's using you for. Because my first jobs out of the military were interviewing for data collection. If you know my background, which most people don't, I don't expect you to. I share it because I want you to understand where I'm coming from, if you're willing and curious. Because if you don't know, you don't know. What you don't know, you don't know. When you know it, it's like, whoa, there's a whole lot of other stuff to understand. But you got to understand first. And that's why I say go back to learning who you are. Don't get caught up in what's going on in the world around you. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's reflective of our insides. And when you go within, you start to recognize that what you see around you is within you. As above, so below. As within, so without. So what you see going on in the world, whatever it is that is highlighted for you, is your work to do within. If you don't like it, it's because you're rejecting it within yourself. So rejecting it outside of yourself doesn't heal it. Embracing what is hurt within you is what heals the world. That's our work to do. That's why doing the work, as we call it, is so imperative and so important. The more you deny something within yourself, whether you reject it outside, the more it contributes to the bigger problem. My life has been a series of healing. It's been a series of deep reflection. It's been a series of holy crap. When I was a little girl, I just knew things, and I couldn't articulate. I had to deal with it on my inside because, fortunately, I had a mother that understood a lot. Sometimes I couldn't communicate properly with her, and she didn't learn how to communicate properly when she was growing up, because a lot of her upbringing was she didn't talk about stuff. So in some ways, I know, for me, being as close as I was with my mother, it was like a friendship. And then sometimes it's hard for parents, when you befriend your child, to really treat them as a child. So when they become your friend, sometimes you forget that they have to grow instead of holding you as a parent. Like a lot of times a child becomes the parent at a young age. That's too soon. And so in a lot of ways that's what happened with me and my sisters, that I felt like I took on the role of a parent for both of my parents, especially during the times when they were divorcing, when they were fighting. And like I said, I had this ideology that my parents should stay together, and that they didn't stay together, and it felt like I was a failure as a child. And that's where a lot of kids grow up feeling like they have to fix things, be solvers, be the peacemakers. Or like in my case, I call myself the den mother. I'm a lioness. I'm a Leo and a tiger. And I like to make sure everybody's taken care of. But that's my Libra rising. You know, I have a Libra rising, which is all about balance, harmony, justice. Sometimes I get so fired up, I can jump on a cause, and then I realize maybe that's not my work to do. And when I think about the cause, I realize it's something inside of me that I have to work on. That if something outside of me has fired me up and I want to jump on that bandwagon, I got to step back and take a deep breath and go, wow, what inside of me needs to be healed? That I feel the need to stand up and defend in any case. Any movement outside of myself is a movement I have to work on inside of myself. All of us have to do that. All of us have work to do. Not for others, but for ourselves. And when you do the work for you, you inspire others too. Because your work is a ripple out effect. When you raise your vibe, you inspire and it ripples out in the world. That's doing the work for the world. That's the Gandhi's quote. Be the change you want to see in the world. You want to be seen as a leader? Be the light. Be the lighthouse. Lead by example. Because you showing up as a professional and a leader in your field, your niche, is going to inspire others as well. And then sometimes you realize, you'll look at people and you see the incongruencies in them because that's part of you too. I mean, we'll see incongruencies in areas that maybe we ourselves have been incongruent and not aligned in our integrity. And that just reminds us to stay the course, to stay strong in our path, to stay in our integrity. When you see others outside of you, power grab, power trippers, abusers of power, corruption, if that incites violence or anger in you, look in the mirror and ask yourself, where in yourself do you need to realign with your own integrity? That's a humble, come to Jesus moment. I do it all the time. If somebody upsets me because they're not showing up in a congruent manner, they're not showing integrity, and I have had it happen so much over this past year. It's really saddened me. People I've admired, people I've aspired to be like, have shown me some things that I've really just got wow, okay. You know, you're teaching me. Because they're teaching us. Everybody's our teacher. And everybody's a student. Don't take that humbly and don't be all up in your ego. Ego is what ego is. It likes to be right. It doesn't seek to be happy. It's your heart that seeks to be happy. That's the head versus the mind. You got to drop into the heart. Feel into what's real. Feel the feels. That's what's real. So integrity and congruence has to be aligned in the heart, not in the head. The head, it picks up on it. It's got to be the observer. But if you don't master your mind will master you. Conscious or unconscious, that's the programming over you. I love to rhyme, can you tell? There's a beautiful bird overhead. The birds, nature always speaks to me. That's one of my favorite things about travel. They watch over me. The universe has got my back. I love that. Where's my phone go? I got 34 miles to my exit. I'm on I-75, Alligator Alley. So, thank you for joining me on my trip out east. Yeah, I was a big road tripper back in the day, too. I would jump in my car. I got that from my mom. Mom was all about jumping the car whenever she wanted. And when she'd say, hey, girls, come on, we're going to go for a ride. We didn't know how long that ride was. We didn't know if we had to pack a bag. Usually Mom would pack a bag for us, probably. But sometimes it was in northern Maine, anywhere to go is 4 to 6 hours. So if the road trip was longer than 4 to 6 hours, we knew we were going the distance. Sometimes it was going to visit family, friends. We actually had quite the exciting childhood, and I'm grateful for that. Unpredictable, spontaneous, I'll take that over the mundane, predictable, any day. Why? Because it's outside your comfort zone, you grow. Adaptability, flexibility, that's what keeps you alive. That's what keeps you youthful. It's what keeps you on your toes. If you can't adapt and overcome the challenges that life throws, your nervous system, that's why I teach Kundalini Yoga, that's why I talk about the breath, that's why I talk about prana, the life force, because that is the spirit, that is the connection we have to God, to Source. Anytime you're cut off from Source, anytime someone tries to restrict your breath, your movement, your life force, that's not about you. That's not thinking of the herd. That's not groupthink. That's control. That's malevolent. That's not benevolent. You got to tap into your wisdom, people. Learn to discern what is in your best interest. If people start using terminology like think of others, you're one of the others too. And if it doesn't align with you, and if it doesn't take care of you too, then it's not in your best interest to follow. The idea that we're all in this together needs to mean you too, not just a group, which is so generic because it could be nobody, or it could be everybody, or just a few. So it's real easy to play the games, but when you know the game, when you know the rules of the game, you can master it too. Don't fight it. Find a way to go with it. Fighting is resistance. Whether you comply or you deny, you fight it or you go with it, it's the same energy you're giving it. You're creating, you're adding, you're putting another brick in the wall. The powers that be, as they say. I don't like the word elite either. You need to remember that language, it gives power, it's vibration, it's energy. And words cast spells, so when you don't choose your words carefully, you're contributing to your own spell cast. And the curse that has been cast upon society, culture, as we steep in this cult of personality, that the truth is we're the ones with the power and we are the elites. And you need to own that. Because if you don't own it, you'll be owned. And that's where we're at right now. And these are my deep thoughts and my reflections and ponderings of life. Because I like to hear myself, because 85% of what you say out loud is meant for you to hear. So as you hear it, I'm hearing it too. Because that's how I do my work, is I listen to my own words. And that's why I make these videos, because I like to even listen to my videos and go, wow, I actually channeled that. Because sometimes it's coming from a source that's even more than just this human being that you're hearing and seeing. We are all channels of the divine. We all have that connection. It's whether you tap into it and own it. Because recognize the other is you. And God is in all. If you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. And you are God too. So, it's a beautiful thing about life. Beautiful thing about life. We are creating it. We're participating in it. We created all of this for us. We created the game. We're playing the game. We get to change the game. It's choice. That's the gift of choice. It's our superpower. Once again, the power's in your hands, but it starts up in here. And it should be coming from here in your heart. Always recognize, are you coming from a place of fear or a place of love? Can you drop into your heart? Because fear will make you do things that are totally against your best interest. Fear will take you out of your peace and put you in pieces. Fear will put you in someone else's hands. It will give your power away. Love wins every single day. And actually, even at the root of fear is the fear of not being loved. The fear of not having love, to not experience love. So you can have compassion on all fronts, but discernment and awareness are the key. And again, it's getting to know yourself that is the most important overall. That this life is all about you getting to know you. And to get past all the things, all of the barriers, all the challenges, the obstacles you've created up in here, the belief systems you've adopted, all the dogma. You know, my cat ate my dogma. I'm working on that one. You know, we all have it. Our biggest addiction is to our dogma, our belief systems. Whatever it is you think, that's real for you. That's your experience. It can be at your demise, or it can be a surprise. Let life show up and surprise and delight you. Wake up in the morning and say, world, what do you got for me today? Surprise and delight me. I'm ready for it. I am open to receive the gifts of abundance that you have in store for me. I know I am worthy. I am worthy of love and connection. Because that is what I am here for. Truth is my identity. Satnam. The truth in me recognizes the truth in you. That's love. And even my truth, that's always going to be my work to do. Truth. The one thing that never goes away, and that's love. So, I think it's time to sign off and take a break. These trips can be long and exhausting too, or they can be energizing and exciting. I'm excited to connect with new people. That's why I'm doing this. Hopefully I get to see a couple friends that I've been missing. Give a big hug, share some of my pooch, because that always comes from my heart. But yeah, we're here to create the new. Just remember that. What is it you want to see in the world? I want to see systems where we go back to the honor system, where we trust one another, we learn to tap into our own intuition, and we recognize who we can trust because we learn to trust ourselves first. If you can't trust yourself, what makes you think you can trust any organization to take care of you? That's the biggest disservice you do to yourself, is when you don't learn who you are and what you can trust about yourself, that you think you can put your hands in someone else's, your body, yourself, in someone else's hands. That is not trust. That is codependency. So, with that said, Alligator Alley, we got 22 miles getting out of here. I love you all. Peace be with you. Enjoy this beautiful Sunday with my soulful reflections. Share this video. Make sure you subscribe. Click the like and make a comment, because that's how the algorithm works. If you don't connect with me, you don't give me feedback, they don't think I exist, they don't think I'm worthy of being seen. You know, that's the funny thing about technology. I need your help. So make sure you click the notification bell. Make sure you get my notifications, subscribe, comment, like, share, whatever you can do. I appreciate you. I love you all. Have an amazing, blessed Sunday. If I can, maybe I'll zap back on here, maybe on the way back, maybe during my trip. But remember to subscribe to my other my social media stuff too. And I value you and appreciate you, or I wouldn't share myself with you. Lots of love.